"We're restructuring," she said, her voice flat and businesslike. "Your position is being eliminated. We'll provide you with a severance package, of course. A generous one, considering your years of service. No explanation beyond corporate jargon and buzzwords. No gratitude for the decades I had poured into the company. No recognition that without me, there might not be a company for her to inherit. Just cold indifference, delivered with the casual cruelty of someone who had never had to fight for anything in their life, who had never understood what it meant to build something from nothing only to watch it be taken away. But before we continue this story, please tell me your name, the city you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel." I was blindsided. Absolutely blindsided. I sat there in that chair, the same chair I had sat in countless times to discuss strategy with her father, and I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My mind was racing, trying to process what I was hearing, trying to understand how this could be happening. After everything? After 25 years? After all the sacrifices, all the late nights, all the deals I had closed, all the problems I had solved, all the times I had put the company before my own family, my own health, my own happiness? I was heartbroken. Truly, deeply heartbroken in a way I hadn't been since. I don't even know when. This wasn't just about losing a job. This was about losing my identity, my purpose, everything I had built my life around for more than 2 decades. The company wasn't just where I worked, it was who I was. And she was taking that away from me with all the emotion of someone canceling a subscription service. I never expected it to end like this. When I used to think about how my time at the company would conclude, I imagined a retirement party, speeches about my contributions, maybe even some kind of advisory role where I could help guide the next generation. I imagined leaving on my own terms, with my head held high, knowing that my legacy was secure. I never imagined being discarded like yesterday's newspaper, my contributions forgotten, my loyalty rewarded with a pink slip and a severance check. But here's the thing about betrayal: it awakens something in you. Something primal, something fierce, something you didn't know you had buried deep inside. For the first few days after that meeting, I was numb, going through the motions, trying to process the reality of what had happened. I went home to an empty house. My marriage had ended years ago, another casualty of my devotion to the company, and I sat in the darkness, staring at the walls, feeling the weight of it all crushing down on me. But then, slowly, the numbness began to fade, and what replaced it was something else entirely. Anger. No, more than anger, fury. A burning, white-hot rage that I had been wronged, that I had been used and discarded, that everything I had given meant nothing to this privileged princess who had never worked a real day in her life. And beneath the fury, there was something even more powerful: determination. A steely resolve that I wasn't about to let her cut me out and keep everything I helped build. Not without a fight. Not without consequences. I started thinking, really thinking about everything I knew. 25 years at a company teaches you things, gives you access to information, creates relationships and networks that run deep. I knew where the bodies were buried, so to speak. I knew about deals that had been made, arrangements that existed in the shadows, connections that kept the whole machine running smoothly. I knew about the boss's personal investments, the offshore accounts he had set up for tax purposes, the trusts and holdings that his daughter probably didn't even know existed. And I wasn't about to let her cut me out and keep everything I helped build. Not when I had options. Not when I had leverage. Not when I had spent 25 years positioning myself, perhaps unconsciously, for exactly this kind of scenario. The boss had trusted me with everything, and in doing so, he had given me power, power that his daughter had overlooked in her rush to push me aside. I started digging. Quietly, methodically, carefully. I reviewed every document I had access to, every email I had saved, every piece of information I had accumulated over the years. I found loopholes in the corporate structure, technicalities in the succession planning, oversights in the legal documents that governed the company's ownership. The boss had been brilliant in many ways, but he had also been human, and humans make mistakes. They leave loose ends. They trust the wrong people. They assume that family loyalty will trump everything else. I uncovered secrets. Not dirty secrets necessarily, but information that could be leveraged, used strategically. I discovered that several of the company's most valuable assets were held in structures that the daughter didn't fully control, that required multiple signatures for major decisions, signatures that included mine. I found clauses in contracts that gave me rights I had forgotten I had, provisions that the boss had put in place years ago, perhaps anticipating that I might need protection someday. Slowly but surely I was moving in. Not with a frontal assault, that would have been foolish and easily defeated. No, I was moving like water, finding every crack and crevice, seeping into the foundations, gathering strength before the flood. I reached out to old contacts, people who owed me favors, allies who had their own reasons to be wary of the new leadership. I activated networks that had lain dormant, called in markers that I had been saving for years. At first she laughed it off. When I started making my moves, when I began questioning decisions at board meetings, when I filed the first legal challenges to her authority, she dismissed me as a bitter old man who couldn't accept that his time was over. She thought I was no threat, just a nuisance that would eventually go away if she ignored me long enough. Her advisors probably told her the same thing, that I was yesterday's news, that my connections were outdated, that the company had moved beyond needing someone like me. But as time passed, the stakes grew higher. My challenges to her authority became more substantial, more difficult to dismiss. I started winning small victories, a contested board vote here, a delayed decision there, a contract that couldn't move forward without my approval. Each victory, no matter how small, was a message. I was not going away. I was not going to accept being pushed aside. I was going to fight for what I had earned. And soon the entire board was questioning her decisions. The same board members who had nodded along with her plans at the beginning started expressing doubts. They started remembering that I had been there longer than any of them, that I had institutional knowledge they couldn't replace, that I had relationships with key clients and partners that predated their involvement with the company. They started seeing her inexperience, her reliance on outside consultants who didn't understand the business, her tendency to make decisions based on trends and theories rather than practical experience. I didn't just want the company, though. That would have been too simple, too clean. I wanted to make sure she would regret ever crossing me. I wanted her to understand, viscerally, what it felt like to have everything you thought was secure ripped away from you. I wanted her to lie awake at night wondering how it had all gone so wrong, questioning every decision she had made, feeling the same betrayal and heartbreak that I had felt when she had dismissed me from her office. The revenge wasn't just about money or power, though those were certainly part of it. It was about justice. About showing that loyalty and hard work matter, that you can't simply discard people who have given you everything without consequences. It was about teaching a lesson that would resonate far beyond this one company, this one situation. It was about proving that experience and wisdom and institutional knowledge have value that can't be erased with a restructuring memo. I spent months building my case, gathering my resources, positioning my pieces on the board like a grandmaster planning a checkmate. I worked with lawyers who specialized in corporate law, who understood the intricacies of succession planning and fiduciary duty. I reached out to minority shareholders who were unhappy with the new direction, who felt that the company was losing its way under her leadership. I documented every misstep she made, every decision that cost the company money or reputation, every instance where her inexperience showed. And then the moment came. The final confrontation, the ultimate showdown that I had been building toward for months. It happened in the boardroom, that same boardroom where I had sat through hundreds of meetings over the years, where the boss and I had made the decisions that had built the company into what it was. But this time the atmosphere was different. This time there was tension in the air so thick you could cut it with a knife. I stood in front of her with everything I had worked for, everything I had earned, laid out in folders and documents and presentations. I had the support of key board members, the backing of major shareholders, and most importantly, I had the legal documentation that proved my case. I didn't just take my share, the compensation and recognition I should have received all along. I took her fortune too. 80% of it, to be precise. Oh, it's complicated, involving trusts and corporate structures and legal interpretations that would take hours to fully explain. But the essence was this. The boss had set up the company's ownership in ways that protected key employees, that recognized contributions beyond what was reflected in official titles. He had created provisions that his daughter either didn't know about or didn't understand. He had, perhaps anticipating that something like this might happen, built in safeguards that ensured I couldn't be completely cut out. When I triggered those provisions, when I activated those protections, when I enforced those rights, the entire structure shifted. Assets that she thought were hers moved into entities that I controlled. Shares that she assumed were securely in her possession were diluted or transferred based on clauses buried deep in corporate documents. The offshore accounts, the investment portfolios, the real estate holdings, all of it reorganized according to terms that the boss had set up years ago, terms that favored long-term loyalty over blood relations. The moment came when the lawyers finished their presentations, when the board voted, when the papers were signed. I stood in front of her with everything I had worked for, everything I had earned, and I could see in her eyes the same shock, the same disbelief, the same sense of betrayal that I had felt when she had dismissed me from her office. The tables had turned completely. She had gone from being the owner of a substantial fortune to having only a fraction of what she had started with, while I had gone from being unemployed to controlling the majority of the empire I had helped build. It wasn't about the money anymore though. It really wasn't. By that point in the process, by the time I was standing in that boardroom watching the reality sink in for her, the money had become almost secondary. It was about showing her that betrayal has consequences. It was about demonstrating that you can't build an empire on the backs of loyal people and then discard them when they're no longer convenient. It was about proving that respect and recognition aren't optional in business. They're fundamental to how these relationships work. And when you push someone too far, they will push back, harder than you ever imagined. That was the lesson she learned that day. That was the truth that crystallized in that boardroom as the board members filed out, as the lawyers packed up their briefcases, as she sat there in her father's chair looking smaller and more lost than I had ever seen her. She had pushed me, assumed I would accept my dismissal quietly, expected that I would fade away into retirement without making waves. And in pushing me, she had awakened something she couldn't control, couldn't predict, couldn't defeat. I thought the moment I took over everything would feel different. I thought there would be triumph, elation, satisfaction, a sense of justice served and wrongs righted. And there was some of that, certainly. There was a grim satisfaction in watching the same board members who had gone along with her decision to push me out now voting to transfer control to me. There was a certain poetic justice in sitting in the executive suite that I had been barred from, making decisions about the company I had always seen as partly mine. But the truth is, nothing is ever the same after betrayal. The money came through, more money than I had ever imagined having, more than I could spend in several lifetimes. The power was real too, control over the company, influence over its direction, the ability to shape its future in ways I had always wanted to but couldn't when I was just an employee. All of that was real and tangible and exactly what I had fought for. Yet it didn't fill the void. The money, the power, the victory, none of it could restore what had been lost. It couldn't bring back the trust one had in the boss, the belief that loyalty would be rewarded, the faith that doing the right thing and working hard would be enough. It couldn't erase the months of hurt and anger and planning for revenge. It couldn't give me back the 25 years I had spent building something that I thought would honor me in the end, only to be discarded like I was nothing. The company is different now too. I've made changes, brought in new people, redirected our focus to be more in line with the original vision that the boss and I shared. In many ways it's more successful than ever. The stock price is up, revenues are growing, we're expanding into new markets. By any objective measure, my leadership has been good for the company. But it's not the same. The spirit that the boss and I had created together, that sense of building something with someone who trusted you completely, that's gone, replaced by something more calculating, more defensive, more aware of how quickly things can turn. I'm not proud of how things went down. That's the truth that keeps me up at night sometimes. Yes, I was wronged. Yes, I deserved better than what she gave me. Yes, I had every legal right to do what I did. But there's a difference between having the right to do something and feeling good about doing it. There's a gap between justice and satisfaction that nobody talks about, between winning a battle and winning a war. I wonder sometimes what the boss would think if he could see what happened. Would he approve of how I fought back against his daughter? Would he understand why I did what I did? Or would he be disappointed that the two people he cared about couldn't find a way to work together, that his death led to a conflict that tore apart what he had built? I'll never know, and that uncertainty haunts me more than I like to admit. But sometimes, you have to do what you have to do to survive. That's the hardest lesson I learned through all of this. Sometimes the world doesn't give you good options and bad options. It gives you bad options and worse options, and you have to choose the one you can live with. Sometimes doing the right thing for yourself means doing something that hurts someone else, even if you wish it could be different. Sometimes survival requires hardness, requires being willing to fight battles you never wanted to fight, requires becoming someone you never thought you'd be. And you learn to never trust anyone who doesn't respect you. That's the other lesson, the one that's changed how I approach every relationship now, professional or personal. Respect isn't something that should be taken for granted. It's not automatically owed because of a title or a blood relation or a position on an organization chart. Real respect is earned through actions, through how you treat people, through whether you honor the contributions they make and the sacrifices they endure. The daughter didn't respect me. She saw me as her father's employee, someone who was paid to do a job and could be dismissed when she no longer wanted me around. She didn't respect the 25 years, the sacrifices, the late nights, the deals closed, the crises managed, the loyalty given freely and completely. And that lack of respect is what led to everything that followed, the legal battles, the board fights, the ultimate shift in control that left her with a fraction of what she had started with. If she had approached me differently that day, if she had sat me down and said, I know you and my father built this together and I value everything you've done, but I need to take the company in a new direction and I'd like to discuss how we can make this transition work for both of us. If she had shown respect, shown recognition, shown appreciation, everything might have been different. I might have accepted a reduced role, might have agreed to step back gradually, might have become a mentor to her rather than an adversary. But she didn't. She chose dismissal over dialogue, severance over respect, elimination over appreciation. And in making that choice, she set in motion a chain of events that she couldn't control, couldn't predict, couldn't reverse. She learned, too late, that respect matters more than authority, that how you treat people determines how they treat you, that power without wisdom is a dangerous thing. I look at the company now, at what it's become under my leadership, and I feel a complex mix of emotions that I can't fully articulate. Pride, certainly, we're doing well, growing, thriving in ways that validate my vision and approach. Satisfaction that I proved I could run this company, that my contributions were real and valuable and not easily replaced. But also sadness, a deep and abiding sadness for what was lost, for the relationships that were destroyed, for the trust that was broken beyond repair. The boss's daughter still has a position in the company. I didn't eliminate her completely, though I could have. She works in a reduced capacity now, reporting to people who used to report to her, watching the company move in directions she doesn't always agree with, living with the consequences of her decision to push me out. I see her sometimes in the hallways or in meetings, and there's a wariness in her eyes, a recognition that the balance of power has shifted irrevocably. I don't take pleasure in her diminished status. I want to be clear about that. This was never about humiliating her or destroying her. It was about justice, about recognition, about ensuring that what I had built wouldn't be taken from me without consequence. If she had learned, if she had approached me at any point and acknowledged what had happened, acknowledged her mistake, we might have found a way forward that was less adversarial. But pride is a powerful thing, and neither of us has been willing to take that first step toward reconciliation. The money sits in accounts, invested in portfolios that generate returns I monitor quarterly but don't really need. The power manifests in decisions I make daily, directions I set for the company, initiatives I approve or reject based on my vision and experience. The victory is real and tangible and documented in legal agreements and corporate structures. But at the end of the day, when I sit alone in my home, still empty, still quiet, still marked by the absence of the family I sacrificed for the career that consumed me, I wonder what it was all for. Was it worth it? That's the question I grapple with in the quiet moments. Did winning this battle, taking control of the company, securing 80% of the fortune, did any of that truly address the hurt I felt when I was dismissed? Did it fill the void left by the broken trust? Did it restore what was taken from me, or did it just replace one kind of loss with another? I don't have a clear answer. Some days, I look at what I've accomplished since that day in her office and I feel vindicated. I feel like I proved something important, like I showed that you can't simply discard people who have given you everything. Other days, I look at the same accomplishments and feel empty, wondering if there was another way, a path that didn't require becoming so hard, so calculating, so focused on revenge. The company continues to grow under my leadership. We've expanded into 3 new markets in the past year, acquired 2 smaller competitors, and increased our market share significantly. By any objective business metric, what I've done has been successful. The employees seem happy. I treat them better than the daughter did, more in line with how the boss used to run things, with respect for their contributions and recognition of their value. The clients are satisfied, the partners are engaged, the shareholders are seeing returns. But I can't shake the feeling that something fundamental was lost in all of this. The joy I used to feel in building something with the boss, that sense of partnership and shared vision, I haven't found that again. I work with talented people now, but there's a distance there, a guardedness that didn't exist before. They know what I did to the boss's daughter, how I systematically dismantled her control and took what she thought was hers. They respect me, maybe even fear me a little, but that easy trust, that sense of being in it together, that's gone, perhaps forever. I've thought about reaching out to her, about trying to find some kind of peace or understanding. There have been moments when I've drafted emails or picked up the phone, imagining what I might say. I'm sorry it came to this. I wish things had been different. Your father would have wanted better for both of us. But I never send the emails, never make the calls, because I don't know if the sentiment is real or just another form of self-justification. And I don't know if she would hear it anyway, or if she's too deep in her own anger and resentment to see past what I've done. The legal battles are over now. The corporate structures are settled. The fortune is distributed according to the terms that were triggered and enforced. On paper, everything is resolved. But The human cost, the emotional toll, the relationships destroyed, those wounds are still fresh, still bleeding, still unhealed and maybe unhealable. I think about the boss often, wondering what he would make of all this. Did he anticipate that his death would lead to such conflict? Did he set up those protections for me because he knew his daughter didn't value what I had contributed? Or were they just standard business precautions that accidentally became weapons in a war he never intended? I'll never know, and that uncertainty is its own kind of burden. What I do know is that business is more complicated than we like to admit. It's not just about numbers and strategies and market share. It's about people, relationships, trust, respect. All the messy human emotions that can't be quantified on a spreadsheet but that determine whether an organization thrives or fails. The boss understood that. He built a company culture based on loyalty and mutual respect, on valuing contributions and recognizing effort. His daughter didn't understand it, at least not at first, and that misunderstanding led to everything that followed. Now I sit in the executive suite, making decisions that affect hundreds of employees and millions of dollars, carrying the weight of what I've done and what was done to me. The money is real, the power is real, the victory is documented and official. But the satisfaction I thought I would feel, the sense of justice served and wrongs righted, that's more complicated, more nuanced, more tinged with regret than I ever expected. I've become someone I didn't know I could be. The person who sat in that office 25 years ago, eager and idealistic and ready to build something great, he wouldn't recognize the person I am now. I'm harder, more calculating, more willing to use power and leverage to get what I want. I'm successful by conventional measures, but I've paid for that success with parts of myself I'm not sure I should have sacrificed. And that's the real story here. Not the drama of the legal battles or the excitement of the corporate takeover. The real story is about what we're willing to become to protect ourselves, to get justice, to claim what we believe is ours. It's about the price of revenge, the cost of betrayal, the toll that fighting for what's right can take on your soul. What would you have done in my shoes? That's what I wonder sometimes when I think about people hearing this story. Would you have accepted the dismissal, taken the severance, walked away quietly? Or would you have fought back, used every tool at your disposal, refused to go down without a battle? Would you have found a middle ground I couldn't see, a way to secure justice without becoming so consumed by the fight? I genuinely don't know what the right answer is, and I suspect there isn't one, just different choices with different consequences, all of them costly in their own ways. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me if you think I did the right thing or if I should have walked away, or if there was another path I missed entirely. I'm genuinely curious what others think, whether they would have made the same choices or different ones, whether they see this as a story of justice or a cautionary tale about the dangers of revenge. And don't forget to like this video if you want more stories like this. Because the truth is, this kind of thing happens more often than we like to admit. Every day, people who have given their lives to companies are discarded, pushed out, dismissed without recognition or respect. And every day some of them fight back, using whatever tools they have, refusing to accept being erased from the story they helped write. Some win, some lose, but all of them pay a price for the battle. If you want to hear more stories of betrayal, revenge, and power struggles, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Because business, like life, is full of these moments where loyalty and ambition collide, where respect and power compete, where the choices we make define who we become. And those stories, those human dramas played out in boardrooms and corporate suites, they reveal truths about ourselves that we might not want to face but need to understand. This is my story. 25 years of loyalty, followed by betrayal, followed by revenge, followed by victory that tastes more bitter than sweet. It's a story about what happens when trust is broken, when respect is withheld, when someone pushed too far decides to push back with everything they have. It's a story about the price of justice and the cost of revenge, about winning battles while losing something essential, about claiming your due while questioning whether it was worth it. And it's a story that's not really over because I still work in that company every day, still see the daughter in the hallways, still carry the weight of what happened and what I did and what we both lost. The money is in the bank, the power is real, the control is documented. But the questions remain, the doubts persist, the wondering about whether there was another way continues to haunt the quiet moments. That's the reality of revenge. It's not clean and satisfying like in the movies. It's messy and complicated and costs you parts of yourself you might not want to pay. You can win and still lose. You can get everything you fought for and still feel empty. You can prove you were right and still wonder if being right was worth what it cost. So I'll keep running the company, making it more successful, honoring the vision that the boss and I shared, treating employees with the respect that everyone deserves. I'll keep living with the consequences of my choices, both the vindication and the regret, both the satisfaction and the loss. And I'll keep wondering what the boss would think, what he would say, whether he would approve of how I fought to protect what we built together or whether he would shake his head sadly at how it all went wrong. That's my story. That's what happens when a boss's daughter cuts you out and you fight back with everything you have. 80% of her fortune now sits under my control, the company thrives under my leadership, and I've proven that loyalty and contributions matter more than blood and inheritance. But I've also learned that victory is more complicated than winning, that justice doesn't heal all wounds, and that some battles, even when you win them, leave scars that never quite fade. What would you have done in my shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like this video if you want more stories like this.